Trump has just signed an executive order to expedite the use of a psychedelic drug. They're promoting it as a treatment primarily for opioid addiction. It's called ibogaine. There's nothing wrong with wanting to stop opioid addiction, but it's the puppets of the fallen who caused the opioid addiction in the first place. Remember the British East India Company, who orchestrated a vast opium trade, which helped them become an economic, political, and military imperial power? Now these same puppets of the fallen are promoting psychedelics as the cure. But the use of psychedelics by beast empires has been going on for thousands of years. I talk about it a lot on my channel. But ibogaine is a psychedelic compound extracted from the root bark of the iboga shrub, primarily found in West Africa. It's used there by shaman, otherwise known as sorcerers, for its hallucinogenic properties, which they claim promote spiritual transformation and healing. See here, this shaman has a third eye. Psychedelic derives from ancient Greek psyche, meaning mind, soul, and delos, meaning manifest, visible. Ibogaine was then adopted for Western medicine by Henri Ernest Bellion, a French botanist and physician who was an officer of the Knight of the Legion of Honor and a member of the Royal Society. So these Royal Society people have their claws in everything. The claim is that many people undergoing ibogaine treatment describe profound introspective experiences that can lead to significant spiritual insights and healing. Apparently, Trump has teamed up with Joe Rogan, who's standing right behind him in this video. And there were tons of comments under that video by people who were so happy about this, thinking that it would help people with PTSD and other issues. So I don't know if the comments were real or not. I hope not, because it is witchcraft. And anyone doing this is opening themselves up to the demonic. So if you are struggling, ask Jesus to help you, and he will. Joe Rogan's channel theme is all about promoting the use of psychedelics, like ibogaine and ayahuasca. See, that's his branding. You see him here with the third eye. He talks about it all the time. Psychedelics are Pharmakeia. The Strong's for Pharmakeia is the use of or administering of drugs, poisoning, sorcery, magical arts, often found in connection with idolatry and fostered by it. Idolatry is the worship of false gods, fallen angels, and demons. So sorcery and Pharmakeia are, according to the Bible, associated with the worship of false gods, fallen angels, and demons. Pharmakeia is a Greek term associated with sorcery, which appears all over the Bible, which condemns sorcery, witchcraft, manipulation, and deception. Pharmakeia as sorcery represents an attempt to appeal to the rebellious spirits rather than the Creator. Galatians 5 concludes that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. That is why the beast system empires have promoted Pharmakeia throughout history. Numerous archaeological sources in Greco-Roman writings confirm that Pharmakeia, charms, and incantations were significant parts of pagan religious practices, employing herbal concoctions and spells to invoke demons or demonic spirits. To invoke demons or demonic spirits. I'll give some examples of the ancient use of Pharmakeia throughout history. The ancient Egyptians did this with the lotus. And remember, Trump gave a lotus sculpture to Pope Francis in 2017 as a gift. So POTUS loves the lotus. The Scythians used Pharmakeia with an opium-like substance mixed with cannabis in the blood of their enemies. Blood is, adrenochrome. The natives and their shaman use ayahuasca along with supposedly Joe Rogan. Who knows if he actually uses it or believes in it, or if he's just promoting it to other people. The British East Empire with their British East India Company poppies. They love their poppies. The British royals even have in the Buckingham Palace garden magic mushrooms that they grow there. Magic mushrooms found in Buckingham Palace garden. Oxford University in the UK has grown the mandrake in their garden for over 400 years. I assume it's used by the witches in training there at Hogwarts. LSD was used by our own CIA and military. It was used during the MKUltra project to demonize people in the 50s and 60s. They used it in direct experiments, but they also partnered with Tavistock, using psychedelic bands to promote LSD and other psychedelics to the masses. And you can tell by the song lyrics and album art of those bands that they are using psychedelics to contact the demonic realm. Rockefeller promoted the use of LSD in the Alcoholics Anonymous program. The founder of AA said he was visited by a spirit being also. And now Trump is promoting it, and it's for the same reason. It's always been promoted to put people in touch with the demonic. Adrenaline-rich blood also has the same effect as psychedelics, and I believe that was part of the cult of Mithras with bull's blood, and continues today with cattle mutilations and other types of mutilations. Aldous Huxley's book, Doors of Perception, gets into the use of adrenochrome also. A friend aptly referenced Aldous Huxley's book, Brave New World, in connection with Trump's promotion of psychedelic drugs and everything going on today. Brave's New World is the dystopian novel set in a world where citizens are psychologically manipulated. Huxley also wrote The Doors of Perception, and that book is about his psychedelic experience under the influence of mescaline, which he used for his entire life. He described psychedelic drugs as a sacramental vision and a facilitator of mystical insight with great benefit for science, art, and religion. Aldous Huxley graduated from Oxford. The Huxley family has been promoted in science, medicine, and arts and literature. Its members occupied senior positions in the UK politics and the Royal Society. The patriarch and grandfather of Aldous was Thomas Huxley, known as Darwin's Bulldog, for his defense of the theory of evolution. Aldous' brother, Sir Andrew Huxley, is Order of Merit and Fellowship of the Royal Society. His brother, Sir Julian Huxley, is Fellowship of the Royal Society and evolutionary biologist and first director of UNESCO. And that's a specialized agency of the UN, and their aim is promoting peace and security through culture. Brave New World is used in some public school curriculum. So this book, written by a mescaline head, is used in literature class in some schools. But what psychedelic drug specifically related to Pharmakeia and sorcery is referenced in the Bible? Wormwood. Wormwood is also used as an end-time reference biblically. The plant was widely known as a bitter herb in the Middle East. Deuteronomy 29 likens wormwood to turning away from God. It reads, "There may not be among you man or woman or family or tribe whose heart turns away today from the Lord our God, to go and serve the gods of these nations," meaning the gods of pagan nations, "and that there may not be among you a root bearing bitterness or wormwood." In this passage, wormwood is specifically referring to the root of a plant, the one with psychedelic properties. The plant is Artemisia absinthium, commonly known as wormwood, and it's used to create a psychedelic drug, also known as wormwood. Archaeological excavations from Ephesus unearthed talismans, scrolls, incantations involving Pharmakeia. Ephesus is where the Temple of Artemis was located, where Paul preached against the worship of Artemis as idolatry. Wormwood, the plant, bears the name for the idolatrous goddess worshipped in Ephesus, Artemisia absinthium. It doesn't seem coincidental that the new NASA project is called Artemis. Side note is, I work for a software company, and we are now required to add Space Force as an additional branch of the military when people provide identification. So now we have the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Space Force. So if we are in the end times, then NASA's Artemis would be an end time project, and that has somewhat of a parallel to end time Pharmakeia with Artemisia absinthium, wormwood. And Pharmakeia is found most prominently in the book Revelation, more than any other book in the Bible, as part of apocalyptic literature addressing spiritual deception. In Revelation 8, the star named Wormwood represents a catastrophic event during the end times. Wormwood is the name of a star that falls from heaven, turning a third of the earth's water bitter and causing many deaths. I assume this Wormwood star is referencing a fallen angel because it falls from heaven. My theory is that this fallen angel is promoting, in some way or another, the use of Pharmakeia, and the death could be referring to physical and or spiritual death. In context, the theory that Wormwood is an apocalyptic reference to Pharmakeia and sorcery is confirmed the further we read in Revelation. So Revelation 9 mentions that humanity did not repent of their sorceries, Pharmakeia, their murder, their sexual immorality, or their thefts. Revelation 18 declares a judgment on Babylon using imagery of widespread deception. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, because all nations were deceived by your sorcery, Pharmakeia. Revelation 21. A closely related term is rendered as sorcerers or those who practice magic arts. But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for the murderers, the sexually immoral, the sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. Revelation 22. Outside are the dogs and sorcerers and the sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. So my theory is that the Nahash, which is Hebrew for sorcerer, in Genesis, tempted Eve with Pharmakeia in the garden, which is what gave her the knowledge of good and evil, or you could say the ability to see into the spirit realm, just like people do today when they do psychedelic drugs. Because this is what sorcerers do, as we just saw. Pharmakeia is associated with sorcery throughout the Bible, so that in the end, at the conclusion of the biblical story outlined in Revelation, the Nahash and his angels will also use Pharmakeia to destroy God's people through Pharmakeia, symbolized by wormwood. We already know that wormwood biblically is used to describe the root of the wormwood plant. And we also saw the other chapters and verses in Revelation following that definition also heavily reference sorcery, which is always associated with Pharmakeia biblically. Now I'm going to play a video I did about this previously, which would indicate that this is the same understanding that the occultists do also have, meaning that it seems they have made the same connection of Pharmakeia with the end times, specifically with the lotus theme, and that was in I Pet Goat 2. I'm going to play this now.
In 1 Peter 5:8 it says, "Be alert and have a sober mind, because your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." So it's langed with its tongue sticking out, which specifically denotes a roar in heraldry, as shown here. I interpret that as, don't do anything that will corrupt your mind and spirit to set it in opposition to the way God the Father created you. The use of the word sober here seems specific. In Hebrew, it translates to not being intoxicated, so that you can be calm in spirit, temperate, dispassionate, discreet, and watchful. Watching seems very important to the end times. In this video, I'm going to correlate some of the symbolism in the occult apocalyptic short film I Pet Goat 2 to the themes of Pharmakeia in the Bible. As you see here, the young man is wasted with pills and needles beside him, indicating Pharmakeia. The snake or the worm is depicted as having caused this. You see it coming out of his brain. So I'm not trying to use occult media for biblical interpretation, but some occultists communicate with the fallen who've been around since the beginning. And I know many people have decoded this short film, but for this video, I'm only focusing on the theme of Pharmakeia, which is present throughout. First, I'm going to play some of a prior video I did explaining my theory that Genesis and Revelation bookend the Bible with themes of the Nahash and Pharmakeia. which caused the spiritual death of man. In Genesis, at the beginning of the Bible, it seems that the byproduct of the fruit in the garden involved Pharmakeia. Then at the end, in Revelation, the third angel sounds, a star called Wormwood falls, burning as if it were a lamp, and the waters become wormwood, and many men die because of it. Wormwood is also Pharmakeia, translated from the Greek word absinthium, a hallucinogenic plant. In Genesis, the Nahash is cursed by God to crawl on its belly and eat dust, like a serpent or a worm. I believe, at least in part, the serpent's curse is due to his use of sorcery in tempting Eve to ingest something that will cause her to gain knowledge of good and evil. Another word for this could be enlightenment, divine illumination, awakened knowledge, which is much different than wisdom. Wisdom is obedience to God. So I'm going to play some of this video now I did before about the Nahash and Pharmakeia in Genesis and Revelation. So the Nahash in the garden at the beginning of the Bible used psychedelics, Pharmakeia, on Eve because he was a sorcerer, and that introduced the fall of mankind. Remember, that was a fruit that if she ate it or took it in, it would give her the knowledge of good and evil. But what knowledge is that? I think it's knowledge of being able to see into the spirit realm. And in the end of the Bible, the fallen will use similar sorcery and Pharmakeia on the people, as described in Revelation. So the introduction and conclusion of any writing commonly summarizes the same concepts and theme of the entire writing. Remember that from school. So to me, that makes sense, that the reference in the beginning in Genesis is a reference to that Pharmakeia, which caused the fall of man, and being able to see into the spirit realm or evil, which is what we know a lot of these witches do. And that's often associated with sorcery and Pharmakeia. And notice it says a third part of the waters became wormwood, the star, which to me hints at possession, or, those evil entities, the star, wormwood, coming into man, perhaps through the waters. I hope I'm explaining that well. So, I Pet Goat 2 incorporates symbolism of Pharmakeia and enlightenment throughout, beginning with the fruit out of which the worm emerges. In this film, it's an apple because that is what most people imagine the fruit in the garden to have been. The worm eventually becomes a serpent. The serpent and enlightenment symbolism are accompanied by a lotus, which is an ancient plant associated with Pharmakeia, enlightenment, and various pagan traditions throughout history. The lotus is a consistent theme throughout I Pet Goat 2, associated with human decay and destruction. So first we see a doorknob rigged with barbed wire. And it imprisons this goat, who begins to appear intoxicated. See, he was dizzy and now his eyes are all messed up, so he's intoxicated. And this goat has a barcode where his third eye is located. But he doesn't look enlightened, does he? All right, so after the Bush classroom scene, which most people are familiar with, where Obama gets his little vampire teeth there. It frames to a scene showing the blonde girl who looks like Alice from Wonderland. Here. Notice in the background is the white rabbit. And that white rabbit seems to be controlling the situation here. One of my subscribers said that the white rabbit represents Lucifer cosmologically in the occult, but it also represents Pharmakeia, like in Alice in Wonderland. The girl also appears to be intoxicated. At the end, you'll notice her eyes. Notice that bunny right there is highlighted, see? Eyes go kind of red. There's your lotus. I forgot to show you that this girl also is sitting inside of a circle. See, she got a circle drawn around her. Sorry, that's my dog choking in the background. There's your circle. Okay, that's common in witchcraft or sorcery, which is what defines the Nahash, sorcery. And she's holding an apple, what most people imagine the fruit in the garden to have been. Notice also this same barbed wire from when the goat was imprisoned is swirling through this scene as well. And of course you have the checkerboard floor. And then after she becomes intoxicated, she drops the apple and the worm comes out of it and it turns into a snake. See, doesn't she look wasted? All right. So that worm and that snake becomes a lotus. This worm eventually turns into a snake. This is Pharmakeia. The snake and the lotus theme is then present throughout the entire video, especially the lotus, all the way up to the end. So let's look at the lotus, which had been sacred historically, and what it represents. It was known as Padma or Kamala in Sanskrit. It has a very long history of over 3,000 years, and it's a highly symbolic plant used in religious offerings valued for spiritual purposes. It holds deep spiritual and religious significance associated with the pagan gods of the Hindus, Buddha or Buddhism, Islam, and China, symbolizing enlightenment, divine beauty, and a spiritual awakening. It's widely depicted in art, architecture, and literature. The traditional sacred lotuses related to the blue lotus featured in Egyptian mythology and possesses similar chemistry. In Egyptian mythology, the lotus symbolizes the sun and rebirth and has been found in pharaohs' tombs. It was used as a psychedelic and an aphrodisiac for religious purposes, including rituals like Hathor's Festival of Drunkenness. Modern recreational use, primarily through drinking infusions or vaping, that chemical, has been associated with toxicity, causing simple symptoms like sedation and perceptual disturbances, it says. In Greek mythology, lotus eaters were people living on an island dominated by the lotus tree. The lotus fruits and the flowers were narcotic, causing the inhabitants to sleep in apathy. After they ate the lotus, they would forget their home and loved ones and long only to stay with their fellow lotus eaters. And those who ate the plant never cared to report or return home. Herodotus in the 5th century BC was sure they still existed in coastal Libya. In the Quran, the lotus tree that marks the end of the 7th heaven. The leaves contain drugs that can act as dopamine and serotonin receptors, similar to opioids such as heroin and others. The leaves can also be used as an antipsychotic, as in the treatment of schizophrenia, which is demonic possession. The use of antipsychotics can result in involuntary movement disorders and brain tissue volume reduction, among other side effects. The long-term use of antipsychotics often changes the brain, both structurally and chemically, in a way that can be difficult or impossible to reverse. This can lead to long-term or permanent dependence on the drug. So continuing with the video. You see the destruction of the U.S., and that looks like an Anglican church tower. They appear to be near an ice wall. I'm sure that represents the Twin Towers collapse. So let's see. We're going to see the shaman type character, and you're going to notice that he's present throughout. There he is. Shaman type character, a sorcerer, and a hash. And they use Pharmakeia in their sorcery. He's doing a ritual dance. His mask is going to change as the video progresses. This one looks like Japanese no. And during that ritual, they channel Nephilim. So he's a shaman, but he appears to be wearing a spacesuit throughout the video. So he's going to jump into the water, So that's the Antichrist figure. He's an Egyptian-style boat with Anubis at the bow. And we already said that Egyptians use lotus. Then you're going to see the Islamic worshippers. And we already said the lotus is also used in Islamic religious rituals. Okay, so you see that moon is blood red. It looks eclipsed. So that's very apocalyptic imagery. So there's that worm. There's that snake, that worm that came out the apple, if you notice, and he's after a human embryo. So the AC appears, and he has Sacred Heart imagery. And he also has a third eye, spiritual enlightenment. Oh, but out of that appears this satanic type, Nephilim type character, and he's the worm. He's in a hash, a sorcerer. He also has Order Ab Cow symbolism. And he's what's going to infect the mind of the young man or boy. The drug-addicted boy. Again, you see this shaman type character, the sorcerer, the Nahash. Then you see the mother goddess figure mourning, and she also has a type of poison in her hand, which is the same color as the lotus flower. And the dead child in her lap has a darkened eye. So here are some green waters They look poisoned, nuclear or something. And you see the lotus again floating. I believe that's an Islamic person, but it could also be Hindu. This scene is interesting because you see these tanks approaching through what looks to be some type of bones. And a subscriber pointed this out on previous videos, which is what caused me to look into iPet Goat anyways, again. And I've done videos about that symbolism of whale bones. Here, you're going to see the boat with Anubis coming through the cosmos, like through a portal, and then the AC is going to be born, and born of fire, like the star Wormwood almost. Wow. Looked like he was coming out of the mouth of a whale. Now here's that same little space guy again. And now this shaman, Nahash, sorcerer, is wearing the mask of a Hindu god. Hindus use the lotus, again, representing enlightenment. AC's collecting fish or souls there. So there you see the AC and this army of gray men in suits emerging from the middle of them, and it looks like he sets off a nuclear bomb. So then the serpent slivers off. So then you see that the conductor is conducting, and then this whirling dervish appears, and he rises up to the sky towards the moon. And whirling dervish are Sufi fraternities, Islamic. Islam venerate the lotus, and the dervish also use meditation and trance to achieve enlightenment. And here's our same Nahash again, our sorcerer, in the spacesuit with a different mask, maybe Tibetan. And at one point in this dance, wings come out of him like he's possessed by a fallen angel, and the mask will keep changing. And then eventually you're going to see it's just a satanic figure, the mask. Here, there. Okay. Now, eventually the AC is going to emerge again in the boat and watch the water. Oh, what's in the water? Lotus. Lotus. In the waters. Notice the color of the clouds. They're the color of the lotus. And then at the end, it's just a bunch of stars and orbs shooting around, and eventually they fall and hit the Egyptian pyramids and destroy them. So in summary, this occult apocalyptic short film has a recurring theme of Pharmakeia, represented by the ancient lotus, accompanied by a shaman, sorcerer, and a hush.
So, maybe this Trump situation with him signing this executive order to promote Pharmakeia is an indication that we are closer to Jesus' return. In any case, we're certain that this is definitely sorcery. This is definitely sorcery and Pharmakeia that is being promoted. And remember, Trump was the one who was the figurehead for Operation Warp Speed and the Crown Virus Vipers. So it seems they're determined to get that Pharmakeia into us one way or another. And POTUS loves the lotus. Thanks for listening.